Interest rates are a key component of our economy, impacting everything from mortgages to credit cards. Over the last few years, rates have been rising, but now we are seeing a push to lower them again. While lower interest rates may seem like good news for consumers and businesses, there is an important question we need to ask. Could we be heading towards a debt crisis if rates continue to drop? In today's video, we'll explore the potential risks of too many interest rate cuts and how they could lead to a debt crisis that impacts both individual finances and the broader economy. So let's dive in and understand the potential consequences of these economic changes. Step 1. The purpose of interest rate cuts. First, let's understand why interest rates are typically lowered in the first place. The primary goal is to stimulate economic activity. When interest rates are lowered, borrowing becomes cheaper for businesses and consumers. This encourages spending, investment, and economic growth. For example, people are more likely to take out loans for homes, cars, and businesses when the cost of borrowing is lower. So it is a tool that central banks use to support the economy, especially during times of recession or slow growth. However, there is a fine line between stimulating the economy and encouraging excessive borrowing. The risks of too much debt. While lower interest rates are meant to boost spending, there is a major downside. They encourage more borrowing, and with borrowing comes debt. The problem starts when individuals, businesses, and even governments start borrowing too much because the cost of loans is too attractive. They take on more debt than they can afford to repay. You know, it is easy to overlook the dangers when interest rates are low, but the debt piles up quickly. For example, if people take out larger mortgages, buy more expensive cars, or rack up credit card debt, they may not realize just how much they owe until interest rates rise again or they face unexpected financial challenges. So the risk? A debt crisis. If a large portion of the population or businesses are heavily in debt or unable to repay, it could lead to defaults, bankruptcies, and a slowdown in economic activity. The impact on government debt. It is not just individuals who can be affected by lower interest rates. Governments can also find themselves in financial trouble. When interest rates are low, it becomes cheaper for governments to borrow money. You know, this may seem like a good deal, but the problem is that governments may borrow too much, leading to unstable debt levels. Over time, as debt accumulates, governments may struggle to meet their debt obligations without raising taxes or cutting public services. And if global investors begin to worry about countries' ability to repay its debt, it could trigger a financial crisis. And in the worst-case scenario, this could lead to inflation and higher taxes. How a debt crisis could impact you? Well, the impact will be felt in a few key ways. Higher borrowing costs. If too many people or businesses default on their loans, lenders may raise interest rates to cover their risks, meaning your mortgage, car loan, or credit card debt will get more expensive. Job losses. If businesses are over-leveraged and cannot repay their debts, they may go under, resulting in layoffs or bankruptcies. Rising taxes. To cover government debt, taxes could increase, leaving you with less disposable income. And economic slowdown. A debt crisis could lead to a broad economic slowdown, with reduced consumer spending and a potential recession. Ultimately, the economy would tighten, and everyone would feel this strain, from everyday families to big corporations. How we can prevent a debt crisis? So, what can be done to avoid this situation? First, it is important for both individuals and governments to be cautious about how much debt they are taking on, especially when interest rates are low. For individuals, the key is to borrow responsibly. Just because borrowing is cheap doesn't mean you should take on more debt than you can handle. So focus on paying down high interest debt, saving for the future, and avoiding excessive loans. For governments, transparency and fiscal responsibility are crucial. Balancing the budget and avoiding excessive borrowing will ensure that the debt doesn't spiral out of control.